Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Witch on the Holy Night. Where we last left off, Sojiro was getting bullied by witches. Because witches do what witches will do. So before we begin, remember to leave a like and comment and subscribe to the YouTube channel. So that me, Cherry, knows that you're all real people. Anyway, let's continue on our adventure.
たく、往生際が悪い。
Alko leaned back on the sofa while hurling abusive epithets. Her face looked even more irritated than usual.
見逃すのとここに住まわせるのは別問題よって。じゃあそれ以外にどんな方法があるってのよ。
Let me just double check. Oh yeah, my audio's fine. Cool.
譲る気もなさそうだし、この分じゃ実力行使に出るかもね、あの子。
Watch out, she'll stab you. Or at least try to again. Sojiro threw a wary glance at Alko while she grumbled. He wondered what Alice's show of defiance meant, shattering the glass bottle like she did.
宗十郎には記憶をなくしてもらうってことで話はつけたけど、心の底から納得してないってことでしょ。アリスにしちゃ珍しく他人を意識してたけど、やっぱりここに住まわせるとなると難しいみたい。寝てる分には良かったけど、起きてるあなたを見たらこう、えも言わぬ刺激心を刺激されたとかさ。気をつけてね、宗十郎。あの子、あんたを殺しに来るかもしれないから。
If anything, Alko's warning was an indication that persuading Alice had hit a dead end.
なんか、状況はあの夜からあまり変わってないようだね、青崎。
She shot him an unconcerned look in reply.
そうじゃないぞ。青崎の次はあの子がやる気満々じゃないか。さっきみたいな目にあったら逃げることもできない。こういうの、生殺しって言うんじゃないか。
I don't think that's what that means, Shojiro.
そうならないように努力するのね。ま、アリスの理由は遊園地の時ほど切迫したものじゃないから、そのうち諦めてくれるとは思うんだけど。
青崎の時とは違うアリスの理由？
ええ。遊園地の時は秘密厳守のためだったけど、それは一応解決してる。あんたが底抜けに律儀なやつだってのはアリスだってもう分かってるし。なんで秘密厳守云々であそこまで反対する理由はないの。あの子は単にね、ここに住んでほしくないだけなのよ。それだけでアリスはあんたを殺しただけ。
says Alice. How dare Alko let you off from my house? She doesn't own the house. She said so matter-of-factly, and her eyes cooled as serious. Sojiro had hoped for a trace of deceit or exaggeration, but alas.
確かに、あの子はそんな素振りだったけど、変だね。それならもっと他の手段を取ればいいのに。
Perhaps feeling guilty about putting Alice out, Shojiro looked uncharacteristically concerned. Alko immediately knew that what his words really meant.
例えば、記憶を消す魔術が見つかるまで、さっきの小瓶の中に閉じ込めておくとか？
The apathy in her voice until now was gone. Shojiro answered with a simple nod. In truth, it was undoubtedly the easiest solution for all parties concerned. However,
宗十郎、私、約束は破らないの。
she hated taking the easy way out. And that quiet fury was clear in her soft words. As for where that fury was directed, Sojiro was acutely aware. The pain in his chest made him regret making her say those words.
すまない。考えが足りなかった。
The sudden apology caused her sullen expression to return. Alko had not appreciated how angry she was, let alone the reason for it. To her, his apology came out of nowhere.
あんたって、ほんとわかんないわね。なんでそこで謝るのよ。
She stared at Shojiro, unblinking.
あれ？そうだな。自分でもよくわからない。多分、そういう気分になったからだろう。
Even in saying he was not sure, Sojiro had answered honestly. Alko was at a loss for words.
ただ、青崎の言いたいことは分かった。 約束を守るっていうことは結果じゃなく家庭を守るってことなんだな。
Shot her a brazenly honest smile. That smiling face filled with blissful ignorance almost made her smile back instinctively.
当たり前じゃない。オチだけ合ってればいいなんて恥ずかしくてできないでしょ。
Alco attempted to cover her embarrassment with a quick retort. Though unintentional, having her true feelings exposed like that made Alco a little uncomfortable. Finding offense in something was second nature to Alco. Being made to feel uncomfortable was not. Though far from being unhappy at the remark, she turned away from its speaker. To disguise her perceived shame, Alco started up the conversation again.
あなたを見逃すって言うなら気持ちの問題じゃなくて、ちゃんと状況もそうなるようにするのは当たり前なの。宗十郎をここに住まわせることがあの約束を守ることになるんなら、厄介なアリスだって言い伏せるわよ。脅かすだけならまだしも、ずっと瓶漬けなんてさせられるわけないでしょ。
そっか。青崎があの子を説得しない素振りなのはもうできるだけの説得をした後だからなのか。
He's so dumb.
それで彼女とは冷戦中なんだ。
別にあんたのためじゃないわ。私は私のために約束を守ってるだけだし。お察しの通り、私のやるべきことはもう終わってるし、あとはそっちが努力する番だから勝手にすれば。
Ha, he replied, tilting his head.
あのね、いい？同居案を何とか認めさせることができるのは私だけだから、2日間ぶっ通しでアリスを言い伏せもした。けどそれ以上は無理。私、ここから先はノータッチだから。しばらくはアリスから守ってあげるけど、その間にあの子にあんたを認めさせることはあんたにしかできないんだからね、宗十郎。
Sojiro, this is where you miraculously become a good cook. Sojiro miraculously become a good cook like all the other guys in the Fate series. In Fate / MiHoYoYo. You can't lose if you're good at making food. Sojiro had not expected that at all. Alice Kanonji. The girl in black who kept everyone at arm's length. If Alco was a modern-day mage in Haydn, then Alice was a bona fide witch from the Middle Ages.
青崎、君自分がどれだけ難しいことを言ってるか分かってるか？
そうね。私もこの件に関してだけは同情するわ。
Alco stood up from the sofa. This was the end of the discussion, at least for now.
私たちがどんな人間かはおおよそ分かったでしょ。魔術に関してはこれ以上立ち入らない方があんたのためだから、説明はここまでね。で、肝心の今後の方針だけど、3ヶ月間ここで暮らす。当初の目標というより最初の試練は、なんとかアリスに同居人として認めてもらうこと。
試練って言った。今そういう類のことを言った。
ごまかしてもいいことないでしょ、この手のことは。うまくいかなきゃ粉々なわけだし。
With her cold-blooded remark, Alco started walking toward the door.
あ、そうそう。宗十郎の部屋だけど、3階に用意しといたから。2階のホールの裏側に階段があるから使って。ここは寮ってわけでもないし、時間は自由に使いなさい。ただし、西館にだけは入らないようにね。東館は私が借りてるから比較的安全だけど、それでも歩き回らない方が無難だわ。ま、基本安全なのはあんたの部屋とここだけよ。
中の説明ってまさかそれだけ？青崎はいろいろおかしい。魔術なんかよりもっと大事な説明があると思う。
He desperately called out to her as she began to leave the drawing room. Alco could not help but pity Sojiro.
せめてほら、案内とか。
面倒なんでパス。おのぼりさんを案内するなんて2回もやれば十分よ。起きたばっかりだし、とりあえず今日は部屋で休んだら。朝になったら学校まで案内してあげるから。もっとも、私もそう暇じゃなし。そばについてあげられるのは期末試験が終わるまでってことで。1週間以内にアリスと仲良くなるなり、弱みを握るなりしないと、まあ、あれよね。
So cruel. With barely a wave of goodbye, the student council tyrant walked out. He unconsciously clenched the hand he had raised. He left all alone, he was a complete loss. Then, as if to encourage him, chirp, chirp, chirp. With the sound of a lightly fluttering wings, a blue robin appeared out of nowhere. This tiny, chubby bird innocently looked Shojiro up and down. The blue robin, a bird said to bring happiness according to folklore, flapped its little wings as if to cheer him on. Then, with a flutter, it mercilessly flicked off the lights. Leaving Sojiro alone in the drawing room, Aoko returned to her bedroom. She closed the door to her room, and as soon as she sat on her bed, she was overcome by an unexpected wave of exhaustion. Sojiro had no way of knowing, but she had been preparing for war. In the event that Alice passively pulled out a ploy, Aoko had ready to react in an instant. She sighed heavily, but not from the fatigue she felt that fighting with Alice.
ちょっと突っぱねすぎたか?
She frowned a dejected frown. What weighed on Aoko's mind was not Alice.
でも甘くするのはあいつのためにならないし、基本おとなしくしてもらった方がいいわけだし。
It would be trouble if he wandered around like he owned the place after all. The safest thing for him to do would be if he held up in his room too scared out of his wits to leave.
青崎は味方だなんて勘違いされても困るしね。アリス同様、人手なし扱いされた方が楽だわ。
She nodded to herself, agreeing with her take on the situation. For the most part, it was a sound plan. If there was a problem, it would be this.
すまない青崎、一つ聞きたいことがあるんだが。
Not 10 minutes had passed since leaving him in the drawing room. For Sojiro to shirk off whatever she had said to visit her room so fast, it was like he had no sense of danger at all.
実は外に出たいんだ。
Of course he would ask to leave the house. Aoko lacked the energy for a sarcastic barb.
洋館の中は歩き回らないし、用を済ませたらきちんと戻ってくる。ただ、門限とかあったら聞いておこうと思って。
でも、アルバイトには行くのよね。
How did you know? Shojiro exclaimed in surprise when it was Aoko who desired to display her shock at him.
まあいいわ。基本、午後10時まで。その時間には必ず屋敷にいること。その後は夜勤に出かけるなり、庭でバーベキューするなり、何でも好きにしていい。それと、玄関に鍵はかかってないから。
気のせいじゃなければだけど、青崎、すごく怒ってないか？
あんた相手に気を使った自分に呆れ果ててるだけよ。外に出るのはいいけど、その前にこの錠剤飲んで。
ん？
Sojiro took the purple pill from her outstretched hand and dubiously put it in his mouth. He told himself it must have been some kind of medicine.
それじゃあ行ってくる。いろいろありがとう、青崎。
あっそ。今度は窓から出ていかないでよね。
Sojiro laughed himself all the way to the foyer, unsure of what exactly he had found funny. And Aoko watched him go, both indifferent and amazed all at once.
予定が半日早まっただけか。あの薬を飲ませるの、明日の朝にしてあげようと思ったのに。
She huffed, ruffling her hair in exasperation, and returned to her room. Discerning what made Sojiro tick was a waste of brain matter. In all likeliness, he was more concerned about missing 2 days of work than his own well-being after being bedridden for 2 days. With the day's work behind him, Sojiro returned to the mansion.
よし。どこを探しても、2階のホールから上がれる階段はここ。
It was just before midnight. This was the scene that awaited him beyond the rickety staircase.
ほう。
Not much surprised Sojiro, or rather being surprised had become normal to him, The scene, however, was enough to leave him speechless. The room allotted to Sojiro, no matter how he looked at it, no matter how he ran it through his mind, was without a shadow of a doubt an attic. This treatment stirred a tinge of anxiety in him. Just as he was about to flop in the top sheet of bed, wondering if he could make this work despite his share of other problems, he saw an awkward courtesy so meager it'd be useless.
寒かったら重ねて使うこと。これはサービスとする。
The message in the memo pointed to the meticulous personality of the author. The bed had been perfectly prepared, carefully setting aside the blanket that had been painstakingly placed on the edge of the bed. For him, in case he needed it, he looked up to the sky. Though faint, the stars twinkled throughout the night. Though faint, the stars twinkled. Why can I not say words? Okay. Though faint, the stars twinkled throughout the skylight. For a mountain boy, that meager light was more than enough for him. Stark contrast with the drawing room had caught him off guard, but now that he had collected himself, it was not so bad. This room fit his personality. Even if he was still not used to the building, he felt more at ease here than he did in any building in the city. Perhaps it was built on a hill surrounded by woods. The atmosphere here was a little closer to the mountains where he used to live.
でも、家の中に霧が出るのはどうなんだろう。
He crooked his neck, pondering over the spectacle he had witnessed. On his way to the room, Shojiro encountered what looked like a fog in the foyer on the second floor. The misty fog drifted in the portion of the corridor, reminding him of a swarm of mosquitoes. As he stared at it, he could have swore he'd make out a strange landscape. And as he moved closer to get a better look, again out of nowhere, here inside the mansion, a little blue bird darted purposely in front of him.
鳥?
The bird caught his attention, stopping him in his tracks. When he looked to check on the fog again, the strange scene had disappeared.
この家、隙間でもあるのかな。明日青崎に聞いてみるか。
He muttered to himself as he sat on the bed. Meager as it was, then the starlight peeping in through the skylight calmed him.
これなら。
Exhaling slowly, he lay down. For the time being, he had the essentials needed to live, and his bed was many times softer than it appeared. Thinking his worries seemed smaller than they were, he quickly drifted off to sleep. That was the story of when he opened his eyes and to when he fell asleep. Just like that, the short night following the long night was over. For one thing was true. Sojiro was an optimist at fault, but it wasn't the end of the world. Now, let us rewind 5 hours prior to this glutton for punishment going to bed. It was 7 o'clock in the evening, just after the unproductive discussion between the two mages and the boy had ended. Leaving her roommate and the intruder in the drawing room, the girl walked alone in the foyer. From there, she headed to the west wing. These were Alice Kononji's personal chambers, in which even her roommate Aoko Awazaki seldom dared to step foot. The foyer was illuminated only by pale moonlight. Hard footsteps echoed through the dreary moonlit lobby. In such mansions in Japan, there was no custom for removing shoes at the door. Hence, Alice crossed the foyer in her boots. She only removed them when she relaxed in her bedroom. Suddenly, she remembered something from her childhood. She used to enjoy the feeling of the cold, hard wood on her bare feet and would walk around the foyer on particularly sunny days. After her father affectionately scolded her for it, she never did it again.
そうだったわね。青子は結局守らなかった。
She let out a quiet sigh. Alice's new roommate, from whom she took on after coming to Japan, would not comply with her instructions.
落ち着かないものはしょうがない。
Aoko would say, changing her into her slippers. Aoko might have found it natural to do so, given that she lived in a typical Japanese house throughout middle school, but every time Alice heard her flip-flopping through the foyer, she wanted to cancel their cohabitation. By now, Alice was not particularly bothered by it anymore. Human adaptability was remarkable at times and ungracious at others. The emotional attachments of the past had proved far too brittle to under the weight of reality. A little blue bird was perched on the banister. Its tiny chirping made Alice stop and look its way.
今夜は放っておくわ。今は青子の問題よ。
The lack of feeling in her voice made the bird tilt its head as it sang. Tweet, tweet, tweet. It trilled as if questioning its master's uncharacteristic leniency.
約束は約束よ。今夜ぐらいは多めに見ないと。青子と彼はそれだけの活躍をしたのだし。
She said to the bird, her voice betraying her discontent. If you win, I'll let you go. She would keep to that promise in spite of the unquenchable desire to fight that burned in her chest.
でもその後の処遇は別の話。条件付きのゲームに勝ったぐらいで、いつまでも得意げでいられるのは心外だわ。
Perhaps it was perfectionism born from what? Fastidiousness? But despite her prim demeanor, Alice Kanonji was a sore loser. It did not matter to her whose magecraft was superior. Losing the game had proven hard to move on from. The little bird fluttered its wings in agreement. Drinking in Alice's contempt, it was itching to dime bomb the invader. It looked like a soldier saluting its superior officer as it preened itself. The blue bird turned it to face its master. Tweet, 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 tweet. Its light-hearted tweeting seemed to display a desire to deal with Soichiro first thing in the morning.
そうね。理由さえできたのなら、瓶なり本なりに入ってもらいましょう。
Except her words lacked any bite. On the face of it, they were the chilling kind of one might come to accept from the witch's lips, but then again so tame to remind you of a certain robin's flapping.
しばらくの話よ。けど、それも一時だけ。私の我慢も長くは続かないし、だいたい青子も人にかまけていられる立場じゃないわ。5日もすれば思い知るでしょう。
And when that time came, expelling him would be simple. Alice was well aware her roommate was pragmatist with no vision. And the situation she'd created would not allow her to wait around. She could only afford to protect that boy for 3 or 4 days at most. Beyond that, Alice sensed Alka would crack and say something like, "You take care of this, Alice."
それまで待つか。あるいは、私の我慢が効かなくなるか。どちらにしても、結果は変わらないわ。
Alice Kanonji would suffer no more irritations. And protecting a witness, let alone allowing them to live in her mansion, was an indignity. Alice looked up, fascinated by the dense fog that had crawled into the foyer. Above the fireplace was a single mirror. Roughly 3 feet in diameter, it decorated the wall where one might find a painting. Its surface was faintly clouded and vaguely reflected the foyer's appearance.
スナークをなくした影響でしょうね。鏡の機能、しばらくは制御できないみたい。
A little bird joyfully chirped at its master's mumbling. The bird attempted to imply that there was no need for her to lift a finger, not if the nuisance would fall into the mirror on his own accord. Or perhaps, had the little bird had not sang, Alice would have come to the same conclusion. For some reason, she recalled an earlier conversation.
これでも一番無難だと思う。
In response to her question, the boy inside the bottle shrugged his shoulders and answered. From his perspective, the city and the mansion were no different. It seemed that, having just moved from the countryside, everything was something he had never seen before.
自慢できることじゃないが、まだ書き物さえ満足にできないし、都会のルールは複雑すぎて、何が正しいのかさえ。
More than embarrassment, his voice was full of resentment. He was angry about something, though Alice could not tell what. But
だから、どこにいても危ないことに変わりはないんだ。極端な話、道を歩くだけでも、人と話すだけでも不安になる。俺は、どこでだろうとうまくやっていける保証はないんだよ。けど、ここにはそんな奴に気を使ってくれる人がいる。気遣ってくれる理由は物騒なものっぽいけど、それは本当に 贅沢なことだと思うんだ。
Her eyes welled up ever so slightly. Those soft words were something she could not brush off, because they made sense to her. Given that everything in the city was a danger to him, nothing had changed after ever coming to the mansion. In reality, he had no reason to fear this place in particular. If anything was different from the outside, it would be that someone here was his ally. With that view, he had been entirely sincere. His explanation hadn't contained any flattery towards Alice Kunonji, more pandering to Aoko Awazaki. He was simply speaking from the heart. I like it here.
今、鏡に迷い込まれるのは迷惑ね。鏡の機能は侵入者の探索に専念させたいし、彼が迷い込みそうになったら止めてあげて。
The bird shook its feathers at her strange instruction. Alice looked away from the mirror and continued her walk. The bird chirped in protest.
あなたの仕事よ、ロビン。それぐらいの役には立って。
Leaving the bird with that icy retort, she vanished into the west wing. All that remained was the moonlight, and the little blue bird trembling at a perilous prospect of unprecedented change. All scenarios read. Nice to meet you. All right. That's it for this episode of Witch and the Holy Night. Thank you so much for joining us. For next time, we will be continuing up with the next episode, and hopefully the episode will be a little bit longer. So I'm going to do my best to get them all out in one episode for each episode of the game. But as you can see, there's no telling how long each episode will take. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and see you next time. Bye-bye.